In this critique of Western, and I'll just focus on the U.S. education system, it has several layers of critique. So the first layer is the quest or the question. And the question that education is answering is this a good education based on the last few hundred years? And this is the wrong quest to embark on. The most relevant and intelligent question is what skills, if cultivated and developed in this generation, will lead to the highest amount of sustainable well-being and value contribution over the next 100 years. That quest is not being embarked on because the question isn't being asked. It's a faulty question leading to a faulty quest. Next, we have the paradigm of education. And this ties in with a paradigm of intelligence. So there's two aspects of this paradigm. Let's look at intelligence. So we measure intelligence by the ability to verbally recite a bunch of relatively arcane facts. When was this bridge built? When was the 47th president or whatever? So to be able to recite static facts according to politically correct history books, to recite mathematical calculations, to repeat commonly held views presented by the teachers or various textbooks. And we say that is intelligent. And we say, congratulations, you've got an A because you showed up, you sat there, and when called upon, you recited and regurgitated and repeated the various things that we told you were important to learn. And this is the current practice and presentation of what an intelligent person is. An intelligent person is supposedly someone who does that better than most people. This is completely incorrect. Intelligence can be measured by the efficiency with which energy, time, money, and natural resources is transformed into sustainable human well-being. And if you look at the amount of misery in the teachers, in the students, in the taxpayer, and in the community around education, we see that vast amounts of time, money, and natural resources are being consumed to make large portions of the culture miserable for a large percentage of their life. And once you finish high school, then we want to go on to college, etc. So if you look at the actual amount, the yield for those number of man-hours, those number of natural resources, that amount of time and money, you have a staggering amount of depreciating well-being. In many cases, a 5-year-old starting education has more energy, creativity, excitement, and interest and aliveness than a 12th grader leaving high school or someone else leaving college. So we have a negative return on investment in well-being as the felt experience for a majority of people going through the education protocol. So we switch from regurgitating what was done before well to intelligence is the efficiency with which energy is transformed into human well-being. An intelligent culture takes very little natural resources, takes very little amounts of time and money, and creates extraordinary amounts of sustainable well-being relative to their past and relative to other options available to them. The most intelligent person on the planet could be defined as the person that takes the least amount of time, money, and natural resources to create the most amount of sustainable well-being for themselves and others. What's a better way of looking at it? Then we come to the paradigm of the idea of education. So in Western education modules, what you do is you take a large percentage of the people, let's say 20-30% of the whole population, and you segment them by age, and you segregate them from the rest of the culture. You take this group of people and you create an artificial environment called a school. So we're going to take you out of life and we're going to bus you into an artificial simulation of life to prepare you for life. Because that's what school is supposed to do, to prepare you to live a good life. So we're going to take you out of life in order to prepare you for life. This is a fundamentally flawed thought process. Because if you want to prepare for, let's say, jogging, let's say you want to run, well, why would you stop walking and stop running in order to study running? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you stop cooking and stop eating to learn nutrition? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you stop living in order to prepare for life? And so this, if you remember the definition of intelligence, efficiency of energy consumption is a very important part of that. So how can you teach people intelligence when you're asking them to spend large amounts of money to make people miserable by creating large buildings and large transportation structures called school buses that sit empty the majority of the time? So every school complex is empty and underutilized, even if it was a model of life that was useful to learn. It's being wasted more than 70% of the minutes. More than 70% of every educational structure in terms of minutes of use are empty. 70% of the time, the gym is empty. 70% of the time, the soccer pitch is not utilized. So we have massive amounts of institutionalized waste in a simulation of reality that is designed to prepare you for reality. And so if we look at a more intelligent model, what if all the money spent on buses, what if all the money spent on the land for the school, what if all the money spent on a chemistry lab or whatever it was, what if all the money spent on the architecture of these empty rooms was instead plowed into the personalized budgets with a mandate to create well-being in the community? Because what does the community get for this return on investment? Because the community is asked to fund all of this with public money under pain of death. Give us your money or we will kill you. We'll at least shorten your life by putting you in jail if you refuse to pay your taxes. For your own good, we're going to lock you up and dramatically shorten and increase your life and increase its level of trauma for your own good. Because that's how important this is. So what's the community getting for this massive infrastructure of $7,000 to $10,000 per year per student? Are the students getting a retirement fund? No. No money's being invested for retirement. Why not? Take one of those thousands and put it towards the kids' retirement. What's the community getting other than traffic jams and increased real estate prices? Because often some of the biggest land is owned by the school. So supply and demand dictates that real estate prices go up because of the existence of school. Does that benefit low-income housing? No. It increases housing costs. That decreases the intelligent metric. They're getting traffic jams. Oh, all these kids are bussing around at this time, so we can't move in traffic. So what the community gets are increased property taxes, increased cost of buying into home ownership, and traffic jams. What else do they get? They get sullen, irritated, angry teenagers. That's what they get. That's the return on investment for the community. So now let's look at that same phenomena from a maximizing value point of view. What if, rather than building a chemistry lab in school so that you can bring in large amounts of natural resources to replicate experiments for no purpose whatsoever, meaning the community gets zero value out of this? What if, instead, every community that would normally have a school instead has a useful chemical and chemistry lab that is designed to manufacture the needs for the community, so that everyone gets the medicine they need in that community, designed, tested, and shared by the students? Now, what does this do for the student? I can't tell you, as a student myself, how unmotivating it is to sit down and write an essay about something I don't care about, one, my teacher doesn't care about, and that is not going to benefit anyone's life. Sit down and waste your time, having wasted enough of your time in school. Sit down and waste your time creating meaningless nonsense for nobody, so that your teacher can slave away late at night, which they don't want to be doing, grading you on something that is absolutely meaningless. Compare that to my own self-designed curriculum, where the first thing to motivate myself was to get out of school. The next thing was, of course, to re-ask the question, what will be most useful in the next 100 years? Then was to pick subjects that actually related to that, and then was to figure out how to learn those subjects by doing them in a way that touched the community. I was not a very good speller, not a very good essay writer in school, but my self-designed homeschool curriculum led me to, one, pick topics that I was passionate about, and two, submit them to local magazines and newspapers as a 15-year-old. Now, as soon as I knew that there was a chance that my writing could be published, I wanted it to be great. So I edited it 8 times. I read little books on editing and stuff, and shorten it and be concise and this and that and the other. The editor of the magazine that published all of my articles said that I was the best writer because I edited them 8 times. Why did I edit them 8 times? Because for a 15-year-old, I'm actually given a chance to matter in topics that are important to me and that are touching tens of thousands of lives in my community. I wrote about sustainable agriculture. I wrote about the power of writing articles. I wrote about ecology. I wrote about teen dynamics in the streets of my city. Things that mattered to me and to other people. Now, I didn't need a separate school building. I did this from my computer in my room, saving environmental resources. I didn't have a teacher over me, whipping me and saying, get this in on time. Nor was the focus to complete these articles within the shortest amount of time possible. The focus was to create a terrific article that would impact other people. So I would edit it and title it and edit it and title it and edit it and title it and edit it and title it until I thought it can't get any better from here. If that took a day, if it took 2 days, if it took 3 days, the focus wasn't on some artificial deadline, because that's not life. Life doesn't care if you become a millionaire on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or next week. Nor is it a winner-take-all dynamic. If your best friend becomes a millionaire on Wednesday and you become a millionaire on Friday, you didn't lose just because you did it a few days later. You might even have been benefited from learning from the way that he won. So this artificial competition is an absurd paradigm. It's great to measure competency, but a lot of it is relative to the people you're dealing with. It's not objective competency. And we see, echoes of this in what's his name? Talking to Strangers, Malcolm Gladwell, in his and in some of his YouTube videos, looking at universities. What he finds is that you think you're great if you're the top of your class, and if you have a class full of morons, you'll think you're great because you're the top of the class full of morons. And if you're at MIT and Harvard and you're the top of that class, you'll think you're good. But if you're the bottom of your class in Harvard with some of the smartest people in the world, you'll think you're dumb, and so you won't do very much. So there's not even any objective testing in these artificially based competition environments. And so they're actively destructive in some ways. So if you delete the artificial simulation of reality and apply resources and measure value brought to the community, that is a more intelligent way to know if students are learning something useful. The next thing is to correlate education with felt experience. What do I mean? I learned to cook at age 12. My parents sent me off to some boarding school, and they basically had hot dogs and buns. I was a vegetarian. I protested. So they said, okay, you can cook your own food. So I'd never cooked before. I started smelling all the seasoning. I tried this and I tried that. There weren't any recipe books there. So I fiddled around and made stuff that I thought tasted good. Well, this was very exciting. And it's made me a lifelong cook, inventing more than 500 recipes. It's exciting to smell and taste and come up with stuff that has not been done before. It's creative. Now, what happened? All the other kids looked at my plate, looked at their hot dogs and buns, and said, why don't we get some of that food? And so the school owner hired me once a week to cook my food for everyone else. The money was not important at all. The important thing was I was learning a skill that created value for the people around me. Delicious food is valuable anywhere on the planet. So naturally, our schools don't teach how to cook delicious food. How incompetent can you be? Everyone likes to eat good, wholesome, delicious food. So everyone should know how to cook delicious, wholesome food. Everyone needs to drive a car or drive a motorbike. So of course, that's not in the school curriculum. We are not building a curriculum based on value. If we had a curriculum where it said you are going to start a business and make money in school, you're going to learn to cook fabulous food, you're going to learn phenomenal dating tips and to fully express your sexuality, you're going to learn to drive, you're going to learn to have adventures in life, you're going to learn to follow your passions, you're going to learn to pay your taxes and learn how to get a loan and do this. You're going to learn stuff that's going to be useful. And we're not going to just teach you abstract chemistry. You're going to make the medicine for your local hospital. And if we have all kinds of layers of stupidity in our cult, and so all the patents and stuff. Okay, well, how about let's create medicine for those who can't afford $600 a month medical care. How about we take the off-patent drugs and teach our teenagers how to develop those and share those with the elderly and those who need them in the community? And then do a survey in the community. How are we doing? How much well-being has each young person in the community brought to the community? Because here's the phenomenal thing that flips if you take this approach. If you set out to learn what is most valuable for the most number of people, you don't have to pay to learn it. You think I had to pay to learn how to cook? No. My school hired me to cook for other people. Is anyone going to say you have to pay me to give you free medicine from our chemistry experiments and this and that? No. And what about mastering chemical and brain balance, where you learn to create various mind-altering substances and learn the chemistry involved and learn the toxicity, the LD50s of different substances in medicine, what if we had psychedelic experiences where we created the art and the mastery of an initiation ritual, something that most cultures in human history have done? What if we applied a scientific approach to see how much well-being we could create per person, the student body, and by each person shared in the community? And when I studied sustainable horticulture, for example, I didn't go to a building underground to study nature. No, I went and apprenticed myself on biodynamic and organic farms in various parts of Canada and the United Kingdom. And on those farms, while you're farming, you learn about soil and compost. You learn about erosion. You learn about growing things. You learn about regulating the environment, not too hot, not too cold, not too much water, not too little water. You learn about attuning to nature. Haymaking is a very particular thing. You've got to cut the hay at just the right temperature. If it rains, the whole hay spots. So you got to learn about the weather. You got to keep it aerated. You got to flip it a few times. And if you miss that window, the whole hay crop is gone. I remember I slept too late on one of my naps in the afternoon. The farmer was furious. He said the whole crop could be because you took a nap at the moment that hay needs to be turned, because we've got to get this in before the rain. So you learn how to attune to nature. This is a useful skill if you don't want to destroy the ecology of which you're a part. So did the farmer ask me to pay him to learn about farming with my body? And did I remember it more than I would if I was scribbling in a textbook in a bored classroom with neon lights with far more interesting stuff going on outside? Of course I learned it more. And I didn't have to pay a dime. In fact, I got a little bit of an allowance. And I made a contribution. You see, I got to look at the bunches of organic carrots and how they were scrubbed and what. And not only that, I got to appreciate eating. Because it's like, wow, it's hard work to grow food. It doesn't just pop out of nowhere. So the partition nature of education creates an insanity where you have no connection with the reality around you. And so you don't know how to integrate with it. You don't appreciate it. You don't look at a carrot and say, wow, there was a lot of stuff. Worms had to not eat that carrot. Beds needed to be prepared. You don't have a sense of meaning around that because there's no connection. So the final thing is, so we've got the switch from taking you out of reality to prepare you for reality, to immersing you in the community, to creating value every day. To creating value every day. The other thing that we have is many of the teachers are, of course, underpaid, and many of them do not know their subjects with the same passion that a business owner in the community might know their subject. Because the business owner's got to survive. They've got to be competent, or they go out of business. A teacher does not have to be competent, because they can't go out of business. So the child doesn't learn how to measure competency. And there are business people and mentors out there who have never been asked for a mentorship, that know their material better than any teacher in any high school anywhere around them. And that is a waste. And every competent individual has had to develop some degree of intimacy and love with their subject, or you don't get good at it. You've got to have some appreciation and drive, or you don't get to be at the top. And those are the people you want to inspire young people with, because those are the people also who feel sad at the mediocrity dribbling out from our high schools, at the sullen, arrogant, pent-up, enraged youth that we create by curtailing their potential to such a degree. So we connect with mentors. People make a real difference. Well-being is measured, and it takes a third of the money that we're currently spending on education to have 5 to 7 times more value. A third of the money, 5 to 7 times more value. And the question in a self-organizing education program is, how can I develop more value in things that I care about, that touch other human beings around me in a positive way?